guys all can hear me? Like, it's kind of cool. It's like kind of interesting to talk to an audience in that way. So, you know what's like the fun thing about those headphones? As soon as we all are going to be leaving, you all will be having like a small bump inside your hair. So probably people outside of the conference will recognize that. So my today's talk will be featuring lessons learned from deploying Vault at scale. So for experienced users, for people who already deployed Vaults a lot of times, there might not be too much of surprising things in my talk. But still, this one is going to give you a small overview of what things you should consider, or I recommend you to consider when deploying Vault. So a few words about myself. My name is Krass. I work as technical leader for HashiCorp Vault at SVA. So this includes things like managing a community inside SVA, and also like, of course, working with our customers. I think there's like a fly around here or something. Hope that one won't stay here. Let's continue. So a few words about SVA. I won't going to be talking about that for too much because you guys are obviously interested in the technical stuff. But SVA is a German company. We are a system integrator, and we are Germany's biggest owner-operated system integrator. And we're really proud about that. Here are some of our company objectives. We like to deliver good quality and integrity, build up a motivating environment for employees and our partners, and really love our customer appreciation. So, you guys don't necessarily have to take pictures of the slides. In the end of my talk, you will have the opportunity to scan a QR code, which will bring you to a PDF of all the slides. So, you don't have to do that. So SVA actually means System Vertrieb Alexander in long, but we just usually say SVA. Our HQ is located in Wiesbaden, but we got another bunch of other locations around Germany. We feature a lot of industries, which you can see here. So what you might be asking, what brings a German integrator to the US? I mean, our customers are mainly based in Germany, so why would we be here? So we have a good partnership with HashiCorp to bring the products to the German market. And we were able to gather a lot of insights from that. And I just wanted to give the community something back, share some of the lessons learned I collected there. So that's why I'm here, to give you guys a few insights. So today's talk will be focusing first on planning your setup, which is kind of like the most crucial step about the whole thing. The second chapter will be about deploying Vault. The third chapter will be about configuring and operating your Vault. And in the end, we'll do a short wrap-up. So this whole thing is like taking you from day 0 to day 2, like the typical thing you probably know about. Let's start with planning your setup. So all the things you should consider in advance. So first thing is you have to decide where to run Vault. So within the talk, there will be like this little indicator on the top right, which basically is indicating whether the slides are meant for cloud or on-premise environments. We'll start with on-premise environments and compare cost, complexity, and the attack surface. There might be more things to consider, but I'm going to stick with those aspects for now. First option, running Vault bare metal. It has a lot of costs because you have to buy your own hardware for that. And that might be expensive. In terms of complexity, like setting up hardware isn't always that easy, depending on like how your general setup within your company is. But in general, it's not too hard. Concerning the attack surface, this is the best option you guys have because you don't have any abstraction layer between your Vault and your hardware. Another option would be using VMs to deploy Vault on. In terms of cost, this is a little better because usually you guys all have a setup for your VMs, probably some virtualization environment where you can easily spin up new machines. So that also decreases the complexity. So that's why we have more stars for that. And the attack surface is a little bit worse compared to bare metal machines because you've got that extra abstraction layer. You also could run your Vault on Kubernetes. which in terms of cost is very good because Kubernetes is of course highly scalable and it's easy to like run workloads fast. You can deploy it using Helm, so it's easy to deploy. But in terms of complexity in general, you need to have people who are aware of Kubernetes, so you have to have a lot of knowledge inside your company. It is a lot of abstraction between your hardware and your actual cluster, so that is what's also increasing the attack surface. Another option, of course, would be running Vault on cloud. In terms of costs, this is like 2 stars because on the one hand it's highly scalable, but on the other hand, usually like deploying it on cloud is a little bit more cost intensive because of the general prices in the cloud. In terms of complexity and attack surface, this is really good because it's complexity. You can basically just one-click install a whole Vault cluster. And concerning the attack surface, we all expect to have a hardened instance when we are running Vault out of the box on the cloud. Let's continue. Next thing we need to think about is the architecture. So you have to decide whether you should run a single node cluster, probably. I mean, this is a valid setup for some use cases. Or if you need to run a cluster with multiple nodes, not necessarily 3, could be more, or probably not less, but more than 3. Usually it's an uneven number, an odd number. Yeah. Another possibility is also to set up multiple clusters. So for that kind of setup, you can have performance secondary, which is typically used when you have to provide Vault over multiple data centers. And another thing you should consider, or I can recommend you to consider, is to have a disaster recovery secondary, which basically is meant for being more fault tolerant. So you can make your whole architecture more fault tolerant. Next thing I want to talk about is auto-unsealing. So when you set up your Vault, for those of you that don't know it, it comes in sealed state, and you have to unseal it using some commands, but you can also configure it to do that automatically. And there are multiple options to do that. One of these options is to use a second Vault and store the keys for the unsealing process inside that second Vault within the transit engine. That transit engine, or that second Vault, sorry, that can be managed locally, which means you can deploy it inside your own 4 walls. And it is very simple to set up, but in the end, you will have to maintain a second Vault. So you get a little maintenance overhead on that. Next thing which you can use is a cloud KMS. So with that option, your unseal keys, your cryptographic material, will be stored within an external public cloud, for example. And this solution, of course, needs internet access. This is not typically, at least outbound traffic is usually possible, but there are some setups that might be air-gapped or something where you don't have internet access, so that's not working always. But on the other hand, this setup also is very simple to set up because you just store the keys, you just configure your cloud KMS, hook it up to Vault, and it's done. But in the end, you get a non-sovereign setup, so you got some pieces of your setup outside of your on-premise structure setup. Last thing you could do, which I usually recommend, is using an HSM, which is short for a hardware security module. It's just a dedicated piece of hardware you plug into your server, which you can store your unseal material on. This enables local access only because it's inside your hardware. And usually those are very expensive and complex to set up, but it's the most secure way, which is why I'm always recommending this, because Vault is all about security, of course. Another thing we need to talk about is TLS. So, of course, you want to have certificates on your Vault, so all traffic is encrypted. And there's like one thing I have to say here: get your certificates right. Because I've seen a lot of customers out there who are struggling with handling certificates. So Vault, in the end, can help you doing this with the PKI engine. And also for Vault itself, you need TLS certificates. I recommend you, if you issue certificates for the Vault, use the cluster address as the CN field. For the SANs, use the individual addresses of your nodes. So you get one certificate which you can use on each cluster node. Also, you should automate your renewals. So as soon as your certificate expires, your Vault will still be reachable because your certificates won't expire when you renew them automatically. And of course, I recommend using end-to-end TLS, so don't put any transparent proxy inside your network that inspects the packages which are targeting Vault, because that might get you into security issues. There's one thing you can do, and that is letting Vault manage its own certificates. I mean, it's kind of tricky to set up, to bootstrap, because you need TLS on your Vault, but to set up TLS, you need a Vault. But there's a way to do this. When you install Vault in the first place, like with your package manager or something, you get some self-signed certificates which you can temporarily trust. So until you have set up Vault to manage your certificates for you. Next thing I want to talk about is storage. And actually, there's one simple recommendation I can give you here, and that one is use Vault's integrated RAS storage. It was specifically designed for Vault, so it basically integrates very well. And actually, I've never had an issue with it. It has a very good performance, so I really recommend you using that. There are a few exceptions, though. One is you want dev mode. For that, of course, you can use like the dev storage. It's just inside the memory. Another exception would be you're having a single node cluster. Then you also could use the file backends. But also with a single node cluster, you could still be using Raft, which gets you a few advantages while operating Vault. Last but not least, if you need more performance, I recommend you using Console as storage backend, because it has the ability to increase write performance. Let's talk about load balancing. So to access your Vault, which usually consists of multiple nodes, you need a proper load balancer. And Vault is capable of using performance standbys. Performance standbys is an enterprise feature which enables follower nodes to handle read requests. So this is like one good thing to use to overall distribute the traffic for targeting your Vault. Yeah, as I said earlier, you should be using a proper load balancer like Nginx, F5, HR proxy. There are a lot of out there. But if you configure that, you really have to be aware of Vault's health check return codes. There's an API endpoint called syshealth, which gives you information about Vault's current state. And there are like kind of different return codes depending on whether the node is a follower node, a leader node. And if you configure your Vault load balancer for Vault, you need to be aware of those return codes. You even can influence the return codes of the API by putting query parameters on that. And also, you can use virtual IPs. There's been a great talk early on by GitHub, which used BGP to handle the traffic for their Vault, which is a really nice way, I think, to handle that. So you probably should check that out if that's interesting for you. Okay, let's continue. There are some further considerations you could take. I won't be diving too deep into that. Networking is a thing, of course. You should have a proper update strategy, so your Vault stays always up to date. You should automate that as well if possible. Identity management is a thing. So for Vault to work properly, you need an identity manager, like Entra ID, or you can use any other OIDC provider for that. You need a proper offboarding process. So when people enter your company, they get access to the stuff they need, and the access gets revoked as soon as they leave your company. And of course, there are more things you can consider, but let's keep it here. Okay. Yeah, the next step would be deploying Vault. Before I continue, let me just take a little sip of water here. So now that we've got planned everything, we are able to deploy our vault actually. And there's one thing I can recommend you when you are deploying Vault on-prem, and that is using the Ansible Vault role. It is a very good, it is a way to automatically deploy Vault. You only need to have to write a wrapper playbook around that role, have your inventory ready, put in the right variables, and you're all done. You just run Ansible, and your Vault will be set up for you. Nothing else to do there. You can also integrate it in an Ansible automation platform if you have that. Yeah, there's one thing I want to ask you guys, and is if you have time, if you are familiar with Ansible and want to work with us, we are one of the maintainers of this role. So I invite you all to, do pull requests on that. Yeah, I really appreciate that. To deploy Vault on the cloud, I recommend you using the HTTP Terraform provider, of course, when you want to deploy it on HTTP, which is also a very good abstraction, which gets you to work pretty fast. And if you are using one of the hyperscalers, there has been recently these providers have been released, which basically install all the resources you need inside the individual cloud. You can get them by scanning this QR code. You don't have to do that right away. You get the slides in the end of the presentation. Okay. One thing I want to talk about is production hardening. Show you a few considerations I usually take. This is not the whole bandwidth, but just to give you an idea what I always consider. One thing is having minimal privileges ensured, which concerns the file system and your user accounts on your Vault node itself, so on the machine. The next thing is you should disable swap or core dumps, because Vault is storing a lot in memory, and if an attacker is able to access that memory, he can read out secrets, and you don't want to have that happen. For all cryptographic operations Vault is performing, it's really important to have your clocks synchronized on that machines. And you should enforce a single tenancy, which here means don't run any other application than Vault on that server. So the attack surface decreases. Of course, as I said earlier on, make sure updates get installed regularly. You should enable audit logs so you can trace every operation which is happening on Vault. Use end-to-end TLS, as I've mentioned earlier. And you should revoke any root token so no one is capable of using one of these root tokens to attack your Vault. There's more things to consider. HashiCorp has a production hardening guideline for Vault, which you can also get by scanning this code or clicking at the link afterwards. Okay, let's go to the last step, which is configuring and operating your Vault. This mainly includes topics about configuring the Vault itself, so creating resources and stuff. We already have configured like all the stuff which is happening outside of Vault. Now we focus on the stuff happening inside of Vault. And also for that, there's of course a Terraform provider, which is supported officially by HashiCorp, of course, which is obvious. Yeah, I really recommend you using that so you can do infrastructure as code, which in my case is some kind of best practice. Enables you to do reviews, enables transparency, and you can use GitOps workflows. Another important thing to think about is backup and restoring, of course. There's one thing I have to mention here. I'm going to talk about snapshots. So you can do a snapshot of Vault's data to an S3 storage, for example. You can even do that periodically if you're using Vault Enterprise. You just need to configure that in the backend. It's really simple. But yeah, the thing I want to say is a snapshot is actually not a backup. You need all that infrastructure as code, which I've mentioned earlier on, to set up like new Vault nodes if that's necessary, where you can restore your snapshot on. So the snapshot is only part of the game. In the end, you should try restoring your backup. And I mean, I hope you guys did try that, because a lot of people just do backups but never try restoring it. So I really recommend you just to try that out one time so you can make the question mark disappear. Okay, next thing is observability. For observability, there are like multiple pillars. The ones I want to talk about today is handling logs, of course. Vault offers you operational logs and audit logs, which you can retrieve and pipe them into a log aggregation system and/or a CM, like Loki, Splunk, or Elastic, which really eases the way you handle your logs. These systems really help you figuring out what is happening and like getting through all those log entries. Of course, metrics is another pillar. Inside Vault's configuration, there's a telemetry stanza, which you can use to configure metrics getting redirected to a backend, which can be Prometheus, Datadog, there's more. Yeah, within these backends, you collect and aggregate all your metrics in a proper way. And yeah, I recommend you enabling alertings on some key metrics, so you will get notified if something is not right with your Vault. Synthetic monitoring is a thing. This basically means you write automated tests for your standard workflows within Vault. So like logging into Vault, creating values inside a KV engine, reading them back out again, and then probably like destroying the token you've used if that has a too long TTL or something. And these workflows should be run continuously, and you should keep track of the time these workflows take and the results which they show, so you get an idea of like the user experience your users are having with your Vault. This is kind of like I'd probably say an end-to-end way to test Vault. This data is really important for you. Also, for the observability thing, there is a blog post. Yeah, you can get it here. Let's talk about troubleshooting. For troubleshooting, of course, logs and log level is an important thing to think about. You should be able to increase the log level inside your Vault. You should know like where to do that, because in case you need to debug something, you should be able to put the log level on debug. Also, have your unseal and recovery keys ready. So in case you need to restart your Vault node and you don't have auto unseal configured, you need your unseal keys, of course, to unseal your Vault back again. And probably you need your recovery keys to create a root token to access your Vault in a more privileged way. Last thing is, it is a good thing to have physical access to your Vault nodes. So you can SSH into it, or you can go to the server itself to access the Vault, which might be required for troubleshooting. Okay, I think I was pretty fast. Still got like 5 minutes left, but let's start to wrap up what we've learned today. So I showed you now like what to plan when you are about to deploy a Vault, how you deploy it itself with automation like Ansible or Terraform, and I showed you how to configure your Vault itself, and in the end, like how you can do some operational stuff on that. Yeah, as I've mentioned earlier, you can get the slides here. Yeah, this is my contact information. If you have any questions, want to leave any feedback, please feel free to write me a mail. Add me on LinkedIn, or I'll be staying around for a couple of minutes here if you just want to come over. Okay, so yeah, I think that has been the last talk for HashiCorp. Thank you all for having me.